What's up, everyone? Welcome to part 2 of this episode of the Product Mastercast, where I'm talking to Matthew Henshall around the concept of beginning with the end in mind in your product development. So there's some questions I was asking him in the first part, and we're going to dive into it now. We're talking teams, we're talking pivoting in a time of COVID, the importance of sales, and the conundrum of dealing with B2C versus B2B in your product or business development. I hope you enjoy, and if you do, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support is appreciated as always. Thank you for watching and enjoy the rest of the conversation.
That's brilliant. You know, at the company I was working at, I felt like there was a disconnect. The support team and the sales team were getting so much user feedback that wasn't taken into regard when we went to the devs with what to build. No one was doing that. So I've got a couple of questions there. Let me think. Let's go with your team. What is your makeup of your team? Or actually, I want to take it back. What framework do you use for it? Are you using Agile? Do you do Scrum? How are you managing your input and your whole product life cycles and stuff?
Yeah, great question. So there's 12 of us now on the team, 6 engineers and almost 6 sort of teachers, biz dev kind of entrepreneurs who I would consider. We love engineers, we love teachers. Teachers are phenomenal. And I don't mean only teachers, anyone who's been in any kind of sales or entrepreneurship who we got on our team, they're brilliant because they know how to speak to customers. And then we have the 4 founders, engineers, and a couple more now. And myself not really doing any coding at all. And I think that is the makeup of our team. Before I answer the framework, is that one thing that was very valuable early on was the 4 engineers got burnt by not beginning with the end in mind. We learned that lesson on a very personal way. And it allowed us as a team to really, so begin with the end in mind. What does the value mean, right? This is something that's implemented into our day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. Because I'll have a colleague who's saying, Matt, are you beginning with the end in mind? Are you beginning with the end in mind? It's something that's not complicated, but you say it a lot. Are you beginning with the end in mind? And you keep asking yourself that question, and it can sort of answer a lot of things that come down the line. So then to answer sort of what does our framework look like? And it's not rigid. It's not, I wouldn't say we follow an Agile framework. I mean, I've read up on Agile, I know how Agile works. Half my team will know how Agile works. And it is probably most similar to an Agile framework. But it's very much been a react to customers. And if customers are asking for things that are on our strategy and where our compass is pointing, to make sure that that's where we go. Because that's what it is. Like, you've got to have a compass and you've got to know where you're trying to get. And if customers are requesting things that they're asking for, like, that's where it's got to go. And then we focus a huge amount. Our second value is stab in the front. And where begin within the mind is how our company works. Stab in the front is how our colleagues and our culture works. And it sounds a bit brutal. It's the opposite of stab in the back, because I've been in a company where that went badly, the kind of skinnering and the talking behind each other's back. So the communication is such an important part for us. So, if an engineer is communicating, not necessarily spending all their time communicating, but if they can't communicate clearly to the salesperson, it's not the salesperson's fault. It's the engineer's person's fault. If the salesperson can't communicate clearly to the engineer, that's the salesperson's fault. So get that communication right. Make sure your teams are overlapping enough. The framework, whatever the framework be, if something has to jump into a priority list, if somebody has to sit for 5 days and not speak to anyone to get something out, if they can communicate that clearly in a way that we can understand and say, yes, that aligns to where we're trying to go, then that is how we work. And it works for a team of 12 people.
Okay. Is that you guys are 12 working on the 5 products?
Yeah. So 4 products, but 12 just working on the 3 products. The one product sort of running by itself. Yeah.
All right.
Or 11, the one person. Yeah.
You said that they've all been there since, or a lot of them since they've joined haven't left. It's still very much of the core team that you started with, or as they came on, stayed on with you.
Yeah. We've been very lucky with the team we have. Like, I would say the single most important thing in the company is getting the right people on board. We're very young. We've all of our employees have been inbound. I'm certain that's not scalable, but for the first 7 people we've employed have been 8 people have been all inbound. They were someone who was looking for a job and it aligned to what we wanted to do or what we needed. Or somebody who came to us and said, hey, like, we really want to work on this API. Would you please work, can I please join your team? So we've been very lucky in that regard, and it makes a difference because the team is everything in a small business.
Yeah, I think that's something that's changed over the years. If I understand old business versus new business, is just how much more we value people in your teams. They're the ones I always talk about. People think that just pumping out features is the important thing, but it's, you got to remember the people that are pumping out the code and pumping out all of this. So that people factor is so important, and it's just coming up more and more the more I talk to people. That the company value is actually in the people behind the scenes.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think, to be honest, I don't ever want to manage a person. Like, we measure everything, KPIs. I'm obsessed with them, but it's as an input mechanism, not an output mechanism. I'm not here to manage someone and say, hey, you're not online at 8 o'clock. I can't imagine anything worse, and for me, only thing I ask my employees is, like, apply your mind. If you do something and I see you haven't applied your mind, I'm going to, that's when I'm going to give you words and stab you in the front, right? But it's not difficult to apply your mind in the sense, like, don't rush it, get it out. Like, have you thought about it? If you haven't thought about it, why did you do it? Because then you wasted your time. And what's really cool about that is that's the only question I ask them. Like, have you applied your mind? Explain to me how you have, and then I can understand it and then, go with it. And when we employ someone, we've always said, like, we are here for you to tell us what to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do every day. Like, tell us what you need from us. That's what it is. And if you're not happy, if you are working on the wrong thing, like, you have to tell us. And we just have to keep, like, reiterating, like, stab it in the front, even if you don't think you can. So we do take that very seriously because I think it's core.
Yeah. So you say you're obsessed with KPIs. That kind of makes me also think about your data. I think that's quite a big part of what you obviously make your decisions on. How important, how do you, use data to get your KPIs? What is your data culture as such in your company, on the products?
Yeah, great question. So I really do that. You can't manage what you can't measure. I am obsessive over that. And I think it's from my previous industries where what's the point of doing something if you can't measure its impact, or if you at least can't explain its impact? It becomes a beginning with the end in mind. Like, my thesis is that if I build this, it will increase this. Like, can we directly link those two? Sometimes it's very difficult to do. But if you're not at least thinking like that, this will increase our North Star KPI, our most important KPI, what we're trying to do, whether in lesson space is billable hours, in schools is number of schools paying for the product, in Room is number of paying users, whatever it is we're trying to get to, that's like the single most important thing. And then there's tons of stuff underneath that. Like in lesson space, we were doing a time where it was number of lessons, in Skill Up, we were doing something where we used to measure number of lessons taken. But then we actually realized, obviously, like, that's not something we can have a huge control over, because then we're incentivizing tutors to, the second the lesson is bought, to take a lesson. But obviously then we focused on number of lessons bought, because then, we very quickly knew that, like, we could do something about that KPI. It was far closer to us. And then we actually started obsessing over lifetime value cost per acquisition ratio. So there's all very well having lessons bought, but if you're having lessons bought that are you're not earning money on, or you're losing money on, then it's also a waste. So, like, how are we making sure our cost per acquisition lifetime ratio is as high as possible, or as low as possible in that ratio? And then the last thing on KPIs is we always try to measure an input, and we always measure both, but we react to outputs and we focus on inputs. So, simple example is someone in the sales team will say, I'm going to reach out to 100 companies in the next 3 days, and these are the 3 things I'm going to ask them. Terrific. That's all I care about. That's a great idea. Give it a go. The thesis is that maybe 3 of them will be willing to do a trial. And then if 10 of them do, then we know, geez, we thought it would be that, but it was way more. If 1 of them do, even though we might still be happy with 1 customer, we might say, it was a bit lower than what we thought. Why did we think that? So it's never a thing of like a whip, the output KPIs, the input KPIs are very important to us. Yeah.
I'm also thinking about, you're obviously listening to your users and your customers. How do you filter through their feedback and knowing which and what to do? Because there's a saying out there about 10,000 opinions, or 10 people with 10,000 opinions, or something like that. So how do you filter through which and where the real value is that's coming from them? How do you,
Yeah, that's such a good question. Like, it's maybe worth mentioning, like, we in the last couple of months, with us being able to be a little bit more sort of financially secure. We were a startup, we raised capital, we were burning a lot of money. We got it to the point where it's close to sort of the kind of break even, so we can be a little bit more discerning of which customers we take. And we've, firm believers in the concept recently of being able to fire customers. It sounds a bit aggressive, but there's customers we've had and we're like, you are no longer suitable for us. Like, either, we took you on, we said yes to everything, or you're just being very unpleasant, or almost using our policies and stuff. It's not just as simple as unpleasant. And I think what that shows us is that we can look at different customers differently. So for example, we might have a customer who will email us every day with their problem. And, but the reality is that's hugely valuable, because thank heavens they're emailing us every day if they have a problem, but there might be a customer who's doing the exact same thing, but is coming across really angry. And a lot of what they're saying, there's no value to. A lot of what they're saying, it doesn't help us decide what to do. One of the things we also did very early on was we began with the end in mind with these new products. How we did it on Lesson Space is we made our roadmap public, right? So we have lessonspace.com/roadmap, and you could see our roadmap. Now, half of those things on the roadmap are just ideas, and you can submit requests there, and we do. People submit requests all the time. Or we often say in an email, this sounds like a great idea. We look at adding it to the roadmap. Here's the roadmap. Is there anything potentially that you love on the roadmap? And people are like, oh my word, I'm going to get involved in this company, because even if they're not ready there now, in a few months' time, I really want to have this.
And how's the feedback been on that?
Awesome. Some people can't believe that we're putting a roadmap out. Some people have been like, are you crazy to do this? People are going to know what you're doing.
IP.
And exactly, like, but what, I think if there's actually, on that note, to just sort of on like a side note, little comment is, when we were doing Skill Up, we were differentiating on being the most affordable. And we had that double-edged sword that I mentioned. But what we realized is, like, what we came out of there as 4 founders, we said, we never want to be the cheapest again. We want to be the best, and we're going to charge for the best. And when we put out our roadmap there, anyone can go and copy our roadmap. It's just ideas on paper, but is someone going to implement it as well as we're going to implement it?
Yeah.
And that's where it gets, I think people look at it like, oh, why are you doing that? And then maybe there's this, oh, okay, that's why they're doing it. They're happy to tell everyone what they want to do.
Yeah. It reminds me of one of my favorite sayings is, an idea is only as good as its implementation. So if you don't know how to implement it, then it doesn't matter. So you got to go and and turn it into something first.
Yeah. And you're speaking, also to make another side note to any entrepreneurs, early entrepreneurs, or want to be entrepreneurs that are listening. One of the things, or two things I see entrepreneurs get stumped up a lot about. The first is beginning with the end in mind. It is the concept where you say, no, I'm going to build an app to do this. And then often you're like, do you need an app? Like, does your solution need an app? Or couldn't you just like email 50 people? So beginning with the end in mind, super valuable. It forces you to take a thesis. I believe people will love this, and do it in 5 days or a day instead of 8 months like we did. But the second thing is on that idea, the concept of an idea. Like, I see a lot of entrepreneurs getting stuck up on, like, this is my idea now. This is the idea, and I've shared my idea with someone, and they said they're going to work on the idea with me, and they're going to get some equity for working on my idea. But they do nothing. They don't execute. They're just sort of advising. That if you're starting in an early stage, you want people who can execute, even if they have average ideas, even if you sometimes need to tell them what they should be executing on. If they can actively begin with the end in mind, if they can execute, that is all that matters. Don't try and think your idea is valuable. Of course, there's times where that might not be true, and all ideas are valuable. But like really to begin with end in mind, like a little example is a company I know who I'm working closely with, a recent startup in South Africa. They got a B2C model. They're doing really well, doing some very exciting things, business to consumer. So they've got like 10 different cogs working to try and get this thing to work. And then they sort of paused for a second and said, well, why don't we start this as a software as a service? And then immediately, like, you just delete 90% of like your business function and just focus on doing one thing well. And the customers love it because it's cheaper for them, because now you can sell it to the business who then sells it to their sort of consumers. And it just like a little thing where like, oh shucks. And these guys have been brilliant at like getting out into customers' faces, been brilliant at saying like, idea is invaluable, it's the execution of it. And you can see that when they make such quick decisions early on, that if they went the B2C way, which I think they should still do in some way, but they will have these horrible like problems down the way. And being able to, as quickly as they have said, okay, well, we're going to look at this problem completely differently, like you touched on earlier, is really awesome to see.
Yeah, I know. I picked up that a lot of your products seem B2B. What's the main motivation around that? Because now you've been talking about B2C. So what's the motivation around B2B?
B2C in South Africa is difficult. B2C in Africa is difficult. If you know, just take a person's average income in this country or the continent, you know, up to 50% could be going to place of stay. You know, 20% could be going to food. It could even be more. Another 10% could be going to a car. You know, these percentages are large. You whittle it down to like the total addressable markets, and B2C, like consumer goods, is very tiny. It's a very tiny percentage. If you are doing B2C in banking, if you're doing B2C in rent, in accommodation, if you're doing B2C in medical aid or insurance, if you're doing B2C in these big addressable market, the automotive industry, I think you have the chance of success. I think you need quite a bit of capital. It's quite a high barrier to entry. However, I think that in South Africa, it's far easier to take the B2B model where you say, if we get 10 customers who are buying exactly this, we are profitable as a business. With B2C, you might need 10,000.
No, exactly.
And those 10,000, you know,
it's a numbers game, and it's a rough one in South Africa. I could totally get that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what?
So that's
So what's on the cards now for you guys? You've got these 4 products. Room seems to be the one that you're pushing at the moment. Is that where your focus is? Is there anything else that's exciting on the horizon?
Yeah, we've got some very exciting things happening with Room at the moment. I think so how we did it when COVID happened, we basically said, the team strategy was saying, we actually don't know where the market's going to go. So we are going to double down on the things that we know are going to have the highest leverage effect throughout all of our products. And we said, we went through that matrix of saying what is going to be easy to implement and be easy to revert if it doesn't work. So we did that. We doubled down on like reliability. We doubled down on ease of use. We doubled down on the features that were being asked on the products that were being used. And it was very easy to identify quite literally the 20 things that we had to get through in the next quarter. And then it turned into the next 2 quarters because, well, it was the quarter, the extension of the quarter, you know, these things never ever end as quickly as you think. And it's been awesome to for the first time, I think, really in our career before Code for Kids, where in Code for Kids, we experienced product market fit. In Skill Up, we didn't. In Skill Up, it was a difficult sell. In Code for Kids, we couldn't sell fast enough. And that obviously changed, but to be in a place where we're having a huge amount of inbound lead generation for Room and for Lesson Space. And that's been awesome. And what we're trying to do now is, I think a lot of companies maybe will look at Lesson Space or Room and think, oh my word, there's a couple of South African engineers. What are they doing? There's 12 of them. We're trying to change that perspective as much as we can by showing the big brands that we're working with. And it's becoming like a bit of a a snowball effect.
Okay.
So we're taking a huge amount of focus to say, like, you know, people are using this instead of Google Meets in their office. People are using this instead of Zoom to have their online lessons. There's 100,000 people using this thing every month. You know, it's a reliable product, and here's the 3 guys who use it. And then to just, you know, put a face to that brand so they know that they can come in and do it and come in and work with us. So right now we're fielding quite a bit of inbound interest with Room from some very big organizations, both South Africa and abroad, for an internal replacement to Zoom. You know, how we're looking at it is saying, you know, if you think of Slack, if I ask you who's Slack's biggest competitor, right? It's a bit difficult to answer, but if you could say, who did Slack people use before Slack? They used Gmail, right?
Yes.
And Gmail was really good at outbound emails and inbound emails,
Yes.
right? Outbound external emails and internal emails to your team.
Okay.
All Slack did was they said, well, we're just going to do internal emailing better. But you still needed Gmail, so they weren't a competitor, right? They just did one of the things better.
Interesting word. Look, I never looked at it like that.
Yeah. And we're seeing that's what our customers are telling us about Room. They're saying, we use Zoom for our big calls, for external calls. If someone says a Zoom link, we just send the Zoom link. But for us as our team, for recurring meetings, that's where Room gets really powerful because of its collaborative tools. It has the whiteboard, the document editors. You can upload, export, keep it there. It's a Google Doc and Zoom combined. And we're seeing people use Room in that regard. And then we're seeing a big company say, can we host this on our premises and run it throughout our organization for everyone? Because it's also browser-based, so it can be a lot more secure than Zoom. So there's various things that we have to our advantage there. But it all right now, we don't have a 10-year plan. We don't have a 1-year plan. We have a 6-month plan, or the next 5 months till the end of the year. And that's really what we're working at right now. Make sure we can become as profitable as we can so we can employ more people, to be as agile as we can when something exciting is obvious. Not a great answer, but it's what the reality is right now.
Yeah. I want to like throw a punch at you because or spanner, sorry, is if you say the end in mind and you've got a time frame of 6 months, how does that work?
Yeah, great. Yes, great question. I think we don't know what the end is right now, right? We don't know. You know, when Code for Kids when Code for Kids disappeared, when the sales pipeline disappeared, we spent, you know, 3 months. We're like, we believe in the product is going to be good. Let's keep working on the product. But then we realized like it was a waste because we weren't getting new sales, right? So we stopped it. And then we said, okay, guys, just move that resource to lesson space. And then New Zealand started going back to school. So then we got one teacher to start selling to New Zealand again, New Zealand and Australia, about a month or 2 ago. And the feedback we got from the schools was, we can't even budget for 2021, right? So we sort of retracted again. We said, okay, if New Zealand is indicative to what's going to happen to everyone else, we have a little indication that beginning with the end in mind, in this case, is it's not ready yet. So throwing a huge amount of resource at Code for Kids isn't going to be a great use of our time. The end for us right now, or what we're trying to focus on the most, is increasing revenue. Because our revenue tanks so much, we have to sort of get it back up again. And the way that we see that happening is sort of this, you know, low effort, high effect, high reversibility. And so for us, that's what we're trying to do. And the end is just a bit closer to us than normal. And yeah, but it's a great question.
It makes complete sense. And I guess it's everyone's had to figure out how to pivot. You know, everyone's heard of the word pivot, but if you haven't pivoted in 2020 with the pandemic around, you know, you're probably struggling. So it makes complete sense. I think, you know, one of the last concepts maybe we can just touch on is that matrix that you were just talking about, high value, impact, and reversible, things that you can reverse. Do you just want to explain that to us?
Yeah, sure. So reversibility is an interesting one. I think someone in the team read it somewhere. You know, it wasn't something we came up with. And it's one of the things when we ask, are we beginning with the end in mind? And we go through a new product, like how are we thinking about this project? And we still get this wrong, right? If we implement something, how easy is it for us to take that thing away? We think of it in that way. So something might be very easy to do, but it might be very difficult to undo. And, you know, we have hundreds of thousands of customers using it now. And to get feedback, the best way is now, you know, of course we're speaking to customers, but where are customers actually spending most of their time? That's data, right? So let's put something else there and let's see if it works. Oh, it's not working. Take it out, right? And a little example, you know, we have Room, and you can create a whiteboard tab, a document tab, like a Google Doc, a code tab. You can do a whole bunch of things. We started building, and this is us literally not thinking, and this was 3 months ago. We started building an integration for Google Docs, right? So you could add a Google Doc to your Zoom, to your Room. Oh, crisis, I've made that error.
Someone's going to be frowning on you.
We're going to be sued one day, I'm sure. So I will hear about that. But we had this Google Doc integration, and it works quite nicely because you can just put Google Docs, like it's nice for an Excel document or slide where we might use our own built-in doc, but for everything it's nice. It keeps it in one spot. So we had this, and that was very easy to implement. It was a simple iframe, so it fits on the easy to implement. But then we looked at like, how easy is that to reverse? And we actually realized that that's really difficult to go back on.
Really?
And we thought then, well, so for example, if we launched this thing, we say, hey, you can now integrate with Google Docs. It actually eliminates us from ever saying, well, now we use us instead of Google Docs. It sounds a bit outrageous, but Room is Google Docs. But, you know, instead of having docs and a slides and a sheets, you could just have it all combined eventually one day. And that's what it is. And if we start to make that integration easy, we start to take away from what we could potentially do with it. And we also don't have customers shouting at us for it. We had like 1 or 2. So we like fell into our own mistake there. And then we stopped. We said, wait, guys, this was so easy to implement. We just started doing it. This is actually very difficult to undo. So we stopped. So that's one of the ways we look at decisions. Another one is we call the 10-10-10 rule. What effect will this have in 10 minutes, 10 days, 10 months, 10 years, this decision? And obviously makes that a bit easier. So there's a couple of things we try and like ask ourselves in these processes.
Okay, very interesting.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, I think, can we have some last parting words? Like, what would you like to tell the people, considering, you know, the theme of beginning with the end in mind? Any parting words for the viewers?
Yeah, like, you know, I know you know, thank you very much for having the time to talk to me today. I think, you know, you're not going to remember 100 things, but if there's one, it's begin with the end in mind, you know. And I think why it's become such a powerful tool in our business is because it's a story, you know, the mic test story. And stories are translatable, and there's no point in having a value if you can't act on your value every day. And, you know, I will never forget the first time I heard somebody else telling my story to somebody else in my company. I was like, oh my word, like that's translatable. And I think beginning with the end in mind has been super valuable to us. It's like obvious, but are you doing it every day? What are the obvious things that you should be doing every day? For us, as begin with the end in mind, you know, it should also be, you know, kill some of these businesses off, but begin with the end in mind is the obvious one. And I think it's powerful. I really do. It would have saved us a lot of time to be thinking like that earlier. Yeah.
Cool. I like that. All right. Like I said, we're going to make sure we have all the links and everything so people can find you and your companies and all your products. It sounds amazing. I'm definitely going to go do a little research on Code for Kids, because my little nephews are running around and they've got time on their hands, and they this will be a good
What schools are they at?
CBC in Cape Town. CBC, Christian Brothers College, I think it is.
It's very possible we're working with him. I'll check with the Cape Town.
I know that he has started. So I actually bought him a book for Christmas 2 years ago,
cool.
which was, you know, Learn to Code or something. And I gave him my laptop last year, and I was like, oh, was it this year? I was like, come go, I want you to try and do it. But I don't know how far he's gotten. So yeah, Code for Kids could be that answer.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I must check it out. Otherwise, you'll be sure I'll be asking the team to reach out to CBC.
Yeah,
I'm just having a quick look.
They mentioned about being able to do HTML because of the book that I gave him. I was like, yeah, progress.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we do have a CBC.
Parkland.
Yeah, so yeah, it looks like it is here. Brilliant.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Oh, yeah, very nice.
You work too much.
I'm trying to. It doesn't look like we've started, but we'll get them on board, right?
No, absolutely. No, look, I think it sounds like a product that that a lot of schools, and I don't know, I want to actually almost ask you about how does it get into people's homes for a parent to teach their kid, let alone a school.
Great question. You talk about pivoting earlier on.
Yeah.
If Code for Kids was the only product, we would have pivoted into the B2C, very likely. But because of the fact that Lesson Space and Room was growing, we didn't need to. We've designed it for a teacher and a classroom environment, so we've kept it like that. You can use it for free, you know, as a parent and take your student through it, but it's not automated. It's not a game. They're not going to put their earphones on. You're going to have to learn it and then teach it to them.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think like I don't know. I feel like that subject can go on for a while as well. But
yeah.
you know, just talking about, you know, why the parents were willing to spend so much money, and you know, because education is just, you can't really put a price on it, and that's why they're willing to spend on it. So it does make sense to want to go into that you know, realm of the B2C again. Okay, but anyway,
unless you're the best. Yeah.
But anyway,
be the best. You know, don't be the cheapest. Be the best. That's my second piece of.
Your second parting words. I like it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Matt, thanks very much for joining. I really appreciate it. Love chatting to you. Who knows? Might want to invite you back on in a while, see how things have been going. But again, thank you very much. And your message is great, and your product sounds amazing. And I hope everyone that's watching and listening goes and checks you out.
Thanks, Bobby. I love what you're doing and really appreciate the time.
Cool, man. Thanks a lot.